This is the U Show podcast. Hello, everyone, and welcome into the U Show podcast. I'm Chris Treft. I'm with Ben Gisselson. This is, you can call it a special edition, you could say, but it's a short and sweet one for you at the end of the week, where we're talking to Reggie Millette, a guy that some of you might not even have known before this week. If you watch USHL games and you watch Dubuque games, you obviously knew about him because you can't miss him out on the ice. But he's a great kid. He's got a great story. He was featured on NHL.com, so we figured it'd be a perfect time to talk to the man personally that you read about this week. So it was a fun one. Not as big of a talker as the NHL guys. They've had a little more practice than him, right? This is the first time him being in the limelight, but still nonetheless, it's a great story and great to hear it from the man himself.
Well, and such a kid that you pull for, right? The more that I learned about the Reggie Millette story as the season went on, and I got some info a little bit from some of the coaching staff because they knew the story. The coaching world knew the story of Reggie Millette because he's a player that I think every coach in the league would have wanted to have on their roster because he does a lot of things that not a lot of players want to do, but he likes doing that. He likes playing the up and down 200-foot game, and he's really, really effective at it. And, you know, I think about what you said about a guy that maybe you haven't heard of if you didn't watch the Saints or if you didn't watch the USHL this year. He probably wasn't on our radar really either to have on for the podcast this offseason, but with all that's happened, it's kind of almost a microcosm of his story, right? I mean, he wasn't on a lot of people's radars going into the USHL. Took him a couple of years at Tier 3 and then Tier 2 junior hockey to get there, but he certainly has exploded onto the scene now and is getting the national recognition that he certainly deserves. And I love to see guys like him get this kind of recognition because so often it's the scorers, it's the power play defensemen, it's the Tier 1 goaltenders. But this is a guy that you have to have if you're going to win games. I think Oliver David would tell you, the head coach of the Saints, they would not have had the year they had without Reggie Millette. So a big kudos to him, and I enjoyed this. Though it was short, though it was sweet, you could tell that he was really excited about leading the charge for African-American hockey players, not only in the USHL, but now Division I college hockey and hopefully beyond.
I mean, it's a great timing, too, with the Kimo Lou and his passionate article in the Players Tribune. It's a sport that's trying so hard to become diverse and add diversity and really include everyone with all the teams. Hockey is for everyone night. So it's a great time to incorporate all this. And Reggie's just another example. Rags to riches, you could say. He doesn't have the riches just yet. He's still got some work to do. But still, I mean, coming from what he did, and I can relate to that too. I grew up in Fort Wayne. I had a single mom. I had to go through a lot too. So hearing his story reminds me of all the good times and all the hard work it takes to get somewhere. And like you said too, it's all not a team doesn't have 4 lines of scores, right? There's a bunch of NHLers that learned their role and did what Reggie did. And there's a bunch of guys in the American League that will never be in the NHL because they can only score. That's all they can do. And every team already has scores. So they got to learn to play a 3rd and 4th line role. So it has a little bit of everything. And you hear the passion in his voice, and it's just another great interview. And, you know, glad we did this one for sure.
Let's get it rolling.
Joining us now on the U Show podcast is a very special guest. He's had a busy week, to say the least, and he had a very good season with the Dubuque Fighting Saints. Forward Reggie Millette. Reggie, how are we doing?
I'm doing great. How about you guys?
Doing very well. Just trying to kill some time here while we're hockeyless at the moment. But for you, you had a very busy week, as I mentioned, a story on NHL.com. I mean, did you ever envision that happening, and how cool is that to just see that piece, see Butcher Gross talk about you, and just have the whole hockey world kind of focusing on your incredible story?
It's pretty awesome. I always wanted to get my story out there, so whoever could do it for me, it's pretty honoring.
So for the people that haven't read that article, which if they're listening to this, they probably have, but just give us the short, brief version of your story and why it means so much for you to get it out there.
So pretty much I was born in Jacksonville, Florida, and was getting in trouble a lot. So I had to find another revenue to keep me focused. And my grandma moved me to Fort Wayne, and that's where I started playing hockey at, and kind of kept it going since then.
not often those players go from starting in Tier 3 and then work their way up to play in the USHL. It's almost unheard of. It happens on a very rare occasion, but you're one of the select few to even do so and have a full season in the USHL, let alone have a successful season like you did with the Dubuque Fighting Saints. Why do you think you were able to start out from the Tier 3 level and make it all the way to the top tier of United States hockey, junior hockey?
I feel like there's just a lot of people who is backing me and helping me out through the process, and then the hard work that I put in kind of speaks for itself.
Reggie, when you think about the people that have backed you, and by the looks of the article, there's a lot of people that you have to thank. Who are some of the people that you think of most? I'd imagine your grandmother, your mother, but other coaches or people in your life that have helped get you to this point now, which is on your way to AIC to play Division I college hockey. Did you ever think that was maybe in the cards?
I mean, college hockey's always been a dream for me, so I guess it was just a matter of time. And besides my family, I just like to thank the Fisher family and the Ciros a lot because they took me in as one of their own.
I remember back to some games this season where the Bucks were playing the Fighting Saints in Dubuque, a great building, a great hockey town, a great history there. And I've been calling games for 3 years, and I've never heard a fan base chant a single player's name. But every game I was there, I heard the Reggie chant every single night. What was it like to hear your name reverberating off the walls with 2,000-3,000 people chanting? It had to be pretty surreal for you, I'd imagine.
Yeah, it was electrifying. It kind of gave me a boost of energy. It's kind of crazy because they cheer with anything. If it's a penalty or anything, they just go at it. So it gives our team a boost for sure.
Your style of hockey is not gorgeous. It's not the beautiful game, so to speak. But boy, oh boy, is it effective. And talking to Oliver David about the way you play, talking to Callie Larson about the way you played, even talking to our coaching staff about trying to eliminate what you do in the game. You're so effective, but it's not scoring. It's not putting pucks onto sticks for other guys to score all the time. It's working tirelessly. It's that motor that never seems to stop. When did you start doing that, do you think, in your hockey career?
At some point, I kind of realized I'm not the top scorer, so I got to fit in somewhere else and kind of make my role noticed to my teammates and how it's going to be. So I feel like kind of early on, once I stopped scoring a lot of goals, I kind of figured it out.
Was there a coach or a person that you think had the most impact towards the style of hockey we see Reggie Millette playing today?
Yeah, I would say it's I call him Dad, Rick Ciro, kind of pushed me to not be afraid of the physical part of it and kind of showed me how to do things. So give praise to him.
Who are some of the players you try to emulate your game off of?
Ott was a big part of it. Wilson a lot because I would like to add on to that finesse part like Wilson. He's kind of got it in his back pocket, but, you know, he's physical and all that.
So for you, obviously a lot of kids and players, even at the same level you are, even higher, they think that scoring goals is the way to go. They think that they have to do things flashy. If you're not scoring and doing the big celly, then it doesn't really matter, right? So what do you say to those kids, and how did you take that and really look at yourself in the mirror and say, I'm going to be successful by not doing those things? So how do you swallow your pride and stop focusing on those things and make sure you're playing your role and become a great team guy like you are?
I would say you just got to figure it out where you fit in. Really, every team has their skill guy, and not a lot of teams have like that grit in the back end. So if you're one of those guys, I feel like that's still an art, and you still got to practice that as it goes on.
Reggie, you were a leader on a team full of leaders this year in Dubuque. We heard that from head coach Oliver David when we interviewed him when he won head coach of the year earlier on last month. How would you describe the way you led that team this year? Obviously, as a role model, as an example with the way you played, but were you an audio voice as well? Were you an audible voice, or was it more just a lead by example?
I feel like it's a lot of audible voices. In my situation, if you play hard, you can get on people and bring them along. So it goes on with the playing style. If they see you trying your hardest and doing all the little things, then it's kind of easier to speak up and tell another guy, you know, what you see that fits for him.
So now you're moving on to college. You're realizing one of those dreams that we talked about earlier. What do you look up, or what do you look forward to the most at AIC next year? Obviously, it's going to be a whole nother game. You're not going to be forechecking against 16 to 20-year-olds, you're going to be forechecking against 18 to 24-year-olds. So what are you looking forward to the most in college hockey?
I would say it's just sizing myself up again, like always, see where I fit in and see how I stack up against those type of players, and obviously wanting to get better. So I got 4 years to kind of get stronger, get faster, and do all those little things.
Reggie, you talked about in the article that William Douglas wrote so well on NHL.com about growing up as an African-American player playing hockey all the way up and some of the trials and tribulations you had to go through, getting to where you're at now, playing Division I college hockey, having some of the praise that you're receiving and the well-earned praise that you're receiving from hockey people around the hockey community. How much pride does that give you, not only to say that you've accomplished what you've accomplished, but that you're serving as a role model for other younger African-American players that want to do the same thing that Reggie Millette's done?
Yeah, it means a lot to me. Really, it's just another thing of motivation to keep it going and not stop. So for me, it's an honor.
Okay, so last but not least, you have a great story so far. Now the world knows about that. But how do you see it ending? What is that final chapter, closing the book? Like, what do you want that one memory to be? What do you want Reggie Millette's legacy to be?
I want people to realize, you can do anything you want, no matter what the obstacle is. If it's big or small, you can go around it, you can go through it, you can go under it. So really, it's just that motivation to keep going. My grandma always told me, you can do whatever you want. So I took that to heart. And once I started to really get into hockey and, the parents and everything started throwing like slang at me and, these terms, I kind of just used that as more motivation. So I would say the final chapter would most likely be do what you want. And if you love it, keep going and don't let anyone stop you.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for your time, Reggie. Your stories are a real inspiration. And I always look forward to talking to a fellow Fort Wayne guy. But best of luck at AIC next year, and just keep rewriting that story. There's a lot of kids that either read that article or are going to listen to this that are going to be looking up to you. So we know you're going to do a great job. So thanks again for everything.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Well, like we said, it was short and sweet, but he hasn't had all the media practice like all of our USHL, NHL alums, but he's going to get there because I'm sure he's going to have some more interviews as he goes along. Because if the AIC faithful appreciate him as much as the Dubuque Fighting Saints fans do, he's certainly going to be a fan favorite there, and you expect only the best from this kid going forward.
Yeah, top grade kid, and great to hear him acknowledging where he was at as a younger kid, that he maybe wasn't doing the right things and he was doing some stuff that now he maybe isn't that proud of, but he certainly has a lot to be proud of about the way he has really rolled his career forward and seems like a terrific young man. So we're obviously wishing all the best for Reggie as he moves ahead.
I want to give another big thank you to Reggie and Jack and Dubuque, obviously, for setting everything up. It's, everyone's trying to find stuff to do. So for you guys, yourself included, to help the league out and try to put out as much stuff as possible during these busy times is much appreciated.
Well, Jack Molesky does a great job in Dubuque, and I know they've got an individual podcast going on their team there as well. We're just starting one actually as well with the Buccaneers, kind of doing a similar thing to what we're doing here, talking to some of our alumni. But you're right, it's all we really can do right now from an organizational standpoint. Everything else is kind of on a freeze, right? Scheduling, hockey operations, they're trying to get ready for a season, but when is that season going to be? So from the content perspective, we're kind of the one arm of a lot of our organizations that are still really operating at the same clip, if not even maybe a little bit of a more busy clip, because of the fact that there's that much more need and necessity for social media and for content right now. So looking forward to the next one, that's for sure.
Well, speaking of that, we would like to hear what content you guys want to have. So let us know on our social media pages, and make sure to stay tuned to our social media pages for our next U Show podcast. So for Ben Gesselson and Reggie Millette, I'm Chris Treft, and this was the U Show podcast. This is the U Show podcast.